There's very much a focus on on the quality of the product and the experience, and a real DIY kind of ethos that you're constantly tinkering with everything, trying to make everything as absolutely good as you can. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to compete in this kind of market, and you're not going to feel great about what you're doing.
There are many thousands of pizza restaurants in Australia, but there aren't very many doing what Paul Kasten does. His Deep End Pizza is a year-old business in Melbourne's Fitzroy, and he does unique pizzas showcasing some American styles. Paul, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Oh, thank you, Dani.
It's great to have you on the show, and I've had the privilege of spending some time with you at Deep End and watching what you do and eating some of the pizzas, most importantly. For people who haven't been as lucky as I am, give us a bit of a rundown.
Okay, so what we do at Deep End, basically offering three regional American pizza styles. We do the New York thin crust, which is basically your standard big round pie. Then the Detroit style little squares with the crispy cheese around the edge, and then our really decadent Chicago stuffed deep dish pizza.
Well, I mean, you make it sound simple, but I know there is so much work that goes into each of these different styles. Perhaps tell us some of the differences in the ways that you need to make the dough and, I guess, create a timeline for these different pizzas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Actually, each pizza uses a completely different dough, different flours, hydration rates, different mixing techniques, fat contents, and are baked in different ovens at vastly different temperatures. So, it's been a whole lot to figure out and to get fine-tuned for each style, but we've been pretty happy with our results.
Yeah, well, I mean, what has the response been like?
Oh boy, the response has been just fantastic. Just looking out there into the dining room, seeing how happy people are when they have a great pizza dropped in front of them is it's just been very gratifying.
Oh, it's so good. I think the pizza that I found the most surprising was the Detroit one. I felt like I had no barometer for that. Like I really didn't know what it was, and to watch you put it together was so surprising. Can you tell us a bit more about that one in detail? Just take us through the many steps that go to create that amazing pizza.
Yes. So the Detroit sits on a focaccia-like base. It would have evolved from Sicilian-style pizzas in mid-40s Detroit. It's something that it looks big and thick and heavy, but in actuality is pretty light and airy and super crisp. To achieve that, what we have to do is basically go through a par baking process that involves us handling each dough. Oh, I think it's 7 times before it becomes a finished pizza. So from panning it up to a second stretch to fermenting it to lining the cheese with around the rim, the actual baking, removing it from the pans, the storage, and it's quite a process, and not something everybody would be willing to put themselves through. But we feel that that's what it takes to make it as good as it can be.
I think the thing that I loved perhaps the most, and there were many things to enjoy, was this sort of wall of cheese that is around the perimeter of this pizza. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So basically, the cheese itself is a mixture of a low moisture mozzarella and a mild cheddar, and but the pan is basically, the pizza is topped with cheese all the way to the edges. So as it bakes for about 12 to 14 minutes at 300 degrees, you end up with a nice line of crispy caramelized cheese all the way around.
It's amazing adding to that textural experience. And with the Chicago pizza, like what is the craziest iteration of that? And let's dive into the cheese pool factor as well.
Oh, well, let's see. Craziest iteration. Actually, we have one that we've not debuted just yet that's going to be coming online as an occasional limited availability special, where we're essentially recreating the flavors of French onion soup in form of Chicago-style pizza, substituting beef fat for the oil in the crusts, right down to tons of caramelized onions, rich, beefy, cheesy filling, and a big layer of Comte on top. That's about as wild and crazy as I've gone with one of those yet. I've been sticking, pretty close to traditional examples thus far. In terms of the cheese pull, that's something that's been, it's always been popular in Chicago. It's people will just lift a slice and get that Instagram shot with the cheese stretched out a meter or so high. But I was kind of surprised to see it catch on so quickly here in Australia. It seems near every table that gets one is shooting some kind of video or taking a bunch of photos of just that.
I mean, I have fallen victim to the cheese pull video myself. I don't know what it is that's so enticing about videoing melted stretchy cheese, but yeah, there's definitely something to it.
I mean, you pretty much unanimously get a whole bunch of giggles and or just outright laughter from guests as I see what the cheese can do. And we actually had a cheese pulling competition for our first anniversary, and the distance that could be pulled seemed to be pretty much limited by the height of the puller. So people were getting as high as they possibly could on their tiptoes, and the cheese was still stretching.
Did you measure it? Like, was there a winner?
Yes. The winner came in at about 1.4 meters above the table.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that gives me something to aspire to for the second birthday celebrations. All right. So I need some platform shoes. Yeah, platform shoes, maybe a ladder, and a bit of extra strength in my arms to work on. Pizza training, it's going to be the best training. So Paul, when people come and I suppose they probably want to experience a number of different pizzas. Like, how do you sort of put a quality deep end pizza meal together?
That would actually be my suggestion. If you want to have the full experience, come with 6 or 8 people. Get one of everything. Get a couple of salads, and just see if you can work your way through all the pizzas. And whatever you can't finish is we've got reheating instructions on the box for you, and you're welcome to take it home. So bring a large group and just go for it.
Love it. Instructions to go for it. That is the best. So I'd love to learn a bit more about your backstory and how you got into this caper. Take us back. What took you down this pathway?
Oh boy! Well, I suppose like any kid, I always really loved pizza, but I apparently loved it just a little bit more than most. I've been a pizza nerd for a long time, but my background in cooking is mainly in high-end farm-to-table dining in the States, and then done some good contemporary kind of work here. I think. It was really when the COVID lockdowns started, and as a temporary migrant still at the time, I lost my job and had to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to continue in this career, or even think about another one, and kind of brought me back to pizza, being something I've always loved and had fun with, but never really pursued professionally.
And so how did you start?
Oh, well, since I had months on end sitting on my couch to scheme, I started working on plans to do a little pizza pop-up. I have a few friends who own bars in the neighborhood that had some kitchen equipment and infrastructure, and we we kicked around a whole bunch of ideas and got close to doing it a couple of times, but then, come back out of lockdown and you try to resume life, and those plans get pushed aside. So it ended up being about 2 years of on and off looking for a space to do this, and from that it evolved from a Detroit-style pizza pop-up into, well, I can also do thin crust. These deep dish pizzas are a lot of fun. Why not try that too? So yeah, that's how we ended up with our own little shop doing all three styles.
I mean, you've worked a lot in fine dining. Now you're doing pizza. Like, how do you think about that? Is it, did you have to sort of let yourself move into a more casual style of dining, or was it just, where the road took you?
No, I think the way we approach it, most of the chefs I've had in the kitchen with me also, come from similar backgrounds, not pizza people. We approach it with basically the same kind of eye for focus and quality that we would if we were still out there chasing chef hats, and we're using the same quality of ingredients, same suppliers that we would be otherwise, and just trying to focus on making everything that we do as absolutely good as we can. So in that respect, it's really not a whole lot different from what we were doing before.
Well, I mean, having been in your kitchen and seen, let's just pick out, let's say, the quality of the cheese, some of the specialty cheeses that you use, and then the extraordinary specialty mushrooms that you use. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Oh, yes. Yeah. From from the artisan single origin, single varietal flours that we're using to, $60 a kilo wheels of cloth-bound goat's cheddar from the UK, proper Taleggio and Gorgonzola, and basically getting everything in whole and hand processing it ourselves. These are these some examples of the sort of quality that we're aiming for.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just writing a story at the moment about French bistros and French bistros in Australia and how perhaps they differ from French bistros in France. And, some of the people I've been chatting to speak about the fact that diners in Australia, they really want to see something special, something that they couldn't do at home, something that really makes them feel that they are, they're coming to an experience that's worth spending money on. I mean, do you feel that even though you're doing these American styles, that there is something that's very Australian about Deep End?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think, Australia seems to very much share that kind of love of a quality food experience that we really embraced back in Portland, Oregon, where I worked for many years before here. I think there's very much a focus on the quality of the product and the experience, and a real DIY kind of ethos that you're constantly tinkering with everything, trying to make everything as absolutely good as you can. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to compete in this kind of market, and you're not going to feel great about what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I do feel like Portland and Melbourne have some kind of unofficial sister city relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, very, very similar feel, artsy, food-driven kind of vibe, and, liberal politics, and well.
Yeah, interesting. And Paul, the balance between tradition and innovation is something that pizza is very much bound up in. How do you balance those two things?
Oh, well, I think in terms of tradition and in terms of what I call my pizzas, I think I'm pretty well bound to adhering very strictly to the basics of what these styles represent. I'm not going to call something Detroit style if I'm messing around with it to a degree where I'm blurring lines there. But within that context, there's still tons of stuff that can be done to make it more interesting, to modernize things. So.
Yeah, interesting. And what about the venerable New York slice? Is there a way to modernize that, or does it just have to be what it is?
Really, I've got basically infinite topping and flavor combinations to work with. So we treat that thin, crispy, foldable crust ideal as something that we need to get to and then build upon. That's pretty much the way to go there.
And do you have a favorite style to make, or is there one that is more challenging than the others and therefore more satisfying when you nail it?
Oh yeah. I think for me that is the New York thin crust. It's the one that it takes the most skill to hand stretch and put together, the most feel in terms of just how you top it. You can top it in various ways with the exact same amount of stuff. If you're not really kind of focused on how that's acting during the cook, you get kind of dramatically different results out of it. And for everything in that dough, from managing fermentation to oven temperatures, watching just where your dough is at and making adjustments based on that. There's a lot more variables with that one than the other two.
Do you love it?
Yeah. It's heaps of fun. It's a great challenge, and and it feels really good to be slowly making progress toward hitting the quality marks of some of the really old school places back home that I idealize as the prime examples of the style.
Take us to one of them, Paul. Like, what is one of the places that really nailed it as far as you're concerned?
Oh boy, let's see. For me, I could pick one on each coast, basically. The last trip home, I pretty much ate pizza all the way across the country. First up would be a Pizza Shoals in Portland, Oregon. It's run by a friend of my old boss, and they do those big, crispy New York style slices, and his background is it's actually in artisan bread making. So the quality of the crust is just fantastic, and they've been consistently ranked in those all those top pizzerias in the U.S. kind of lists for ages now. And then other favorite on the East Coast would be John's of Bleecker Street. It's in the West Village of New York. That's a place that's been around since I think the 30s or 40s. Coal-fired oven, serve whole pizzas only, no slices, no takeaway, and that kind of old, worn pizzeria look where you walk in and people have been carving into the booths and the tables for decades. Pictures of Bruce Springsteen on the wall and hugging the kitchen guys, that kind of thing.
Wow, that sounds so atmospheric. Must be amazing to eat pizza there.
Yeah. It's...
Paul, we've got a lot of, hospitality people that listen to this podcast, and, one of the biggest conversations at the moment is around costs and pricing. I guess pizza has this reputation of being, an inexpensive food, but obviously you're applying, fine dining principles to what you're doing. And we know that, all the other costs are always increasing. I mean, how are you finding the business side of it?
Oh boy, that was surprisingly difficult in the current climate. Yeah, so basically, having opened just over a year ago, we had costed everything out, and we were all set up to open, and suddenly my cheese prices jumped 15%, and everything started climbing. That was that period where lettuces were suddenly going for $8 or $9 each, and crazy things like that. And some of that has calmed down since. A lot of other costs have been steadily going up. So, oh boy, I think unfortunately, given that the general public is feeling it the same way we are, it's been basically impossible to pass all of those costs along in terms of menu pricing. So basically our margins are just squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And that side of things has been a little more, fairly stressful and difficult. We're still doing well enough to get by, but certainly not as well as you would expect of a pizza restaurant doing good volume. So.
Yeah, that's so interesting, isn't it? Because often people would look at busy restaurants and think, oh, well, they must be killing it. There's so many people spending money there. But yeah, of course. We know that so often it's owners that aren't, owners sacrifice their own salaries or drawings because it's you just squeeze from both ends.
Yep. Oh yeah. I'm in that boat myself. Yeah. So as the squeezes continue to be applied, I've had to cut myself back to a part-time wage that is just enough for me to barely pay my personal bills while we try to ride this thing out. I'm sure a lot of other operators are in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, which doesn't make it any easier for anyone who's sailing there. But I really do hope that things turn around. I mean, do you find that customers are receptive to your prices, or do you have to have conversations with people about no, this isn't that sort of pizza, guys?
Yeah, I think once they actually understand what we're offering, then we don't get much pushback. But people, we get people trolling us online saying, "Oh my gosh, a 10-inch pizza for $50. That's insane. It'd be cheaper to fly to the U.S. and buy a pizza. This is ridiculous." And, so there's definitely some education needed in terms of just how big these things are, how much food we're given here. And once that point is effectively made, they seem to come around. But that's still something. We're getting a lot of pushback from individuals, and really with wages and energy all just set to jump again. Got to look at unfortunately raising prices even further, and so basically we're probably in store for another wave of those kind of comments.
Wow. Well, it's really disappointing, if not surprising, to hear that. I just don't understand why people feel they need to take the time to comment on something like that when they're actually not forced to spend their money there. So I just find that really, really quite baffling. But Paul, I suppose on a more positive side, I'm really looking forward to my next visit. What do you reckon I should order?
Oh boy, I think you should. First off, bring in a group of hungry people. And go for our new Yes Chef menu. We've debuted that along with a collaboration beer of the same name brewed by Boat Rocker for us. And what that will get you is a sampling of all three pizza styles, a couple of salads, a starter or two, dipping sauces, our house-made chili salts, and basically get you the full experience.
I am all about it. That sounds amazing. Paul, all the best with meeting the challenges and feeding Melbourne great American-style pizza. Really appreciate you talking me through it. And thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.